was born in 1934 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the only son of immigrant parents who came here in the early 1930s from Germany. They were German Jews who sort of saw the storm clouds on the horizon as it related to Hitler and the Nazi Party, and they decided that they would immigrate to America while it was still in their capability and in their realm of possibility to do so. So Dwight's formative years, his first 20 years of life, obviously were lived through both a piece of the Great Depression and the majority of World War II. So I mention that simply because one of the things that we're going to talk about in this course is how the upbringing and the society in which and the culture in which an individual has been brought up as a child and has lived in as an adult changes their view of the aging process, and it changes their ethical formation, or what it is that they believe to be right and wrong, and what they believe to be appropriate and inappropriate. So we'll return to that idea here in a little while. But Dwight worked his entire life with one company. He amassed a good deal of wealth at that company through stock options and some great financial decisions. And Dwight was ready to retire early at about 50 years old. Shortly after retiring, Dwight started to display an increasingly troublesome pattern of forgetfulness. Obviously, it started out with just very, very simple stuff. Forgot where I put my keys, forgot what I had for dinner last night, that kind of thing. But a series of more serious events really caught the attention of Dwight's family and started Dwight down the path to what would ultimately be his Alzheimer's diagnosis. A couple of the events that happened frequently in Dwight's case that got his family's attention included some things like repetitive occasions on which he was holding his car keys in his hand and yet wandering around asking where his car keys were. He had a couple of instances where he became frustrated about a bill that he was trying to pay that came back to him because he had put his address not only as the return address, but he'd actually also put his address on the envelope itself, and seemed genuinely confused about why the bill hadn't made it to where it was supposed to go. One event really caught the attention of Dwight's family and got them to start influencing him to try to go see a physician. And that was when his wife heard a commotion in the backyard at about 5 o'clock one morning. She realized that Dwight wasn't in bed with her, and so she got up and she went to look and see what was going on in the backyard. And Dwight was cooking hamburgers and hot dogs. When she asked him what he was doing, he seemed not to be able to tell that this was 5 in the morning as opposed to 5 in the evening, and became frustrated when she tried to explain that this wasn't the time to cook dinner, that this was actually 5 o'clock in the morning. So after this rather bizarre and unusual episode, Dwight's family kind of got together and said, well, we need to do our best to try to figure out what's going on here and if there's something that we can do to stop it. Dwight didn't want to play ball with that idea, and that's not surprising. Not too many people want to go to the doctor and risk the diagnosis that something is wrong with them in terms of cognition or dementia. So his family backed off a bit, gave him a little bit of space, and then had a couple more events that actually pushed them to change their mind about what they were doing. One of them occurred when Dwight seemed one day to have forgotten, as he was returning from running some errands, it seems as though he forgot that his garage door was closed, and he drove his car through his overhead garage door all the way through his garage and actually ended up with the front of his car in his kitchen. When Dwight was questioned about what had happened and how he had ended up with so much damage, his explanation was that his foot had slipped off the brake and touched the gas, but it was pretty clear that there was something more significant than that. A couple of weeks after that, the family got a call from a bystander who said that Dwight had almost been hit by a car as a result of apparently forgetting where to park his car when he was going to the grocery store. Instead of turning into the parking lot and parking his car in a space, he had pulled his car just into the turn lane, the left turn lane, and just stopped his car and parked it and got out and tried to walk across the street to the grocery store. So Dwight's family started to become very, very concerned that something in his aging process was actually going to be causing some serious problems in terms of his health and keeping him from becoming injured, and in some cases maybe even keep him from injuring others. So once again, family approached Dwight and asked him to consent to go be evaluated for this particular condition. Again, Dwight angrily refused. Almost immediately after his refusal, Dwight had yet a third incident in his car. This time he ended up in a town about 55 or 60 miles away from home, and a bystander had called his family on his cell phone to explain that he didn't know where he was and couldn't remember how he got there, and he couldn't even remember the names of the family members who could be called to help. And so this Good Samaritan had gone through Dwight's phone and found some numbers and called and worked out the issue. But at that point, Dwight's family decided that they could no longer leave this issue in his hands and that they were going to go ahead and take some action anyway. So let's look at the action that they took, and then those will be the questions that we use to kick off our first week's discussion.